Hi, and welcome to today's episode of The Supporting Actor. I'm your host, Adrienne Streeter, so let's jump right into it. Welcome to today's episode of The Supporting Actor. I'm Adrienne Streeter, your host, and y'all, I cannot thank y'all enough for the positive feedback that you all provided us last week regarding our episode on vocational understanding with Marquita and just really kind of helping your child and or loved one transition into the workspace. Because of that positive feedback, y'all, we got Marquita back today for part two. And we're going to have just a conversation around what it means to be an advocate. So today's conversation is going to be a little bit different, but yet light, informative, and more importantly, sharing some information for you. All right. So before we bring Marquita on, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and hit that notification button so that when we do upload new content, you will get a reminder. All right, y'all. So without further ado, let's bring Marquita into the studio. Come on in the studio, girl. Hey, Marquita.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. I'm doing good.
So thank you for making time for us and more importantly sharing these good tips and knowledge that you have during this beautiful season in your life. So thank you, Marquita.
No problem. No problem.
So let's jump into our conversation. Normally we have like a series of questions, but we're just kind of chit-chatting today because
Okay.
Marquita is full of knowledge. Marquita, can you kind of tell us what an advocacy or what an advocate is and why it's so important?
Yeah, no problem. So, advocacy, it means getting support from another person to help you express your views, the wishes, and to kind of really help you stand up for your rights, stand up for what is it that you're wanting or promoting or requesting. So that's in a nutshell of what advocacy means.
Well, I think that that's such an important that's one of the things that we push here about being an advocate, not only for your child, loved one, or the person you're caring for, but when you look at history, whether you are looking at the Civil Rights Act, you know, African Americans had advocates, allies, and whether you look at the American Disabilities Act, they had advocates, allies. And so I think that advocacy is just a huge, important part in any aspect of life where people are deemed different or not equal. Um, and I know that you talked about vocational services, and that was such a hot topic. Oh, Marquita, that was such a hot topic. Tell us how employers benefit from being an advocate.
Okay. Well, the thing is that just making sure that the person who has the disability understands that they're their first advocate. They have to be able to understand their rights in regards of like the ADA and the rights of their disability, understanding their disability, understanding their limitations that could impact them. And sometimes a lot of the times people don't. They don't
Mm,
understand those things, but it starts with you. Even if you don't know all of those things of like what is my limitations, or you're not very familiar of how to articulate that to your employer, at least you know I can't see with this small monitor. I
mhm.
need something bigger. I know that I can do a job. I just need it. So then it's you being an advocate for yourself and saying, "Hey, employer, I if you can you please get me a larger monitor, or could I please get a cushion for up under my feet so that I can um extend my stamina to do my job." and then I
Mhm.
can do it a little longer, or I can
Mhm.
see and complete my work a little faster because I'm not squinting and taking a long time.
Mhm.
Those things, being able to understand what is it you need, or what is it that, yeah, just pretty much really what is it that you may need, or just understanding that I have a problem and I want to see if you all could help me with that so I can be better at my job. So
Yeah.
being the first advocate yourself, and then once the employer say, okay, well, this person is asking for some help, maybe as an employer, I might not know how to help them. So they could go out, like I said, and refer them to out to vocational rehab, or um going through through going through HR.
Mhm.
HR is number one, who will be like, okay, let's see how we can help them. If this is something that's an easy accommodation, we could just order it. It's through our company. If they ever leave, we'll still have the items, all of those different things. For another employee, they could do that. Something very easy, cost efficient.
Mhm.
And so it's just really you being an advocate for yourself of saying, hey, I need help. And then the employer saying, hey, what kind of help do you think you might need? That's when, if they don't know, neither one of them are aware of how they can help, that is where they can look into vocational rehab services in their state
Mhm.
to have that help. And it will help the employer. The employer can work with vocational rehab, and the employee can work with vocational rehab to get the services.
So it sounds like a lot of one education within yourself, because
Yes.
you have to know what you don't know. And I think one of the places we can always start is just checking out the American Disabilities Act website. I believe it's ada.gov.
Mhm.
I'll have my producers put that up and correct me if I'm wrong. It might be .com, but when it goes across the bottom here, we'll confirm what that is. And I think that oftentimes people will be surprised at what their employer will accommodate
Mhm.
if they simply ask.
If they
I know that COVID shifted a lot of things in a lot of workforces because people were now at home.
Mm.
Um, can you talk about how being at home, working at home, their home setting, how could the home setting be improved and potentially have that covered by the employer if I'm working from home and I do have a disability? And I know that came out of left field. So, uh, but I'm thinking, how can people who are have a disability, whether you are a preteen going into, your first job, or if you have been living with a long-term disability and or special needs, um, what accommodations could they do within their home? If you know, if you don't, we can research it and tell our audience.
Yeah, okay. Well, my experience in it what is a little most of the time we're going out in the field of working at the employer site. We have had some individuals during that COVID time that I have worked with that have worked from home. And it was mostly of the employer providing whatever needs, just as if they were at the work site. So if they were providing a monitor, or certain keyboard equipment for like carpal tunnels, things of that sort that they have been diagnosed with. And it's just really through the employer being able to provide it. And if that doesn't work out, then when using vocational rehab services, being able to identify what services they qualify for, and if not, what subsidies could
Mm,
be implemented in order for that consumer to be able to get the resources that they need. So there are various ways, and a lot of them are very similar. Employers may just ask for a contract saying that if these things, if we leave or terminate from each other and we purchase it, You might have to just bring those items back in order to get last check, things of that sort, just to ensure that their equipment comes back. So at this point, it's kind of like very similar. It doesn't change. So yeah, and I mean, if y'all do a little bit more research on it, but from what I've experienced working with individuals, that's pretty much how it went down.
And Marquita, now we all know the thing about our podcast, we give perfect scenario answers. What happens, Marquita, when there's a challenge, meaning the employer won't accommodate someone with a special need? They won't come alongside them and be an advocate or an ally. What happens in those situations? And does the employee have any rights to file grievances? And what does that look like?
Well, I can actually say that I haven't had to deal with that where the
Good.
employer did not want to do that. But if that is the case, what the consumer could do is, or the employee could do, is what I say, go over to vocational rehab services. Because if the employer is saying, hey, we don't want to be able to provide, we don't want to deal with that stuff, I think you should just deal with it if that's what you need. Say that's the case. They tell them,
Mhm, mhm.
go over to your state, find out, hey, I have a disability, I need assistance for me to keep my job. This is what I'm dealing with. Can you help me? Will you help me? What do I need to do in order to receive services from your agency? Going through that, then the agency will identify how, when, and where they could help you.
If they can help you.
Yeah, and they
Okay.
will have to determine also, because it's an eligible based agency in service. So they have to identify, you have an actual disability that can be helped, things of that sort. Because you could just say I have chronic back pain, but like I was saying in the last episode, you have to have that documentation to back you up. So if you don't actually have it, maybe the agency, most likely where I am, the agency will send you to the doctor to get those services documented, or get those disabilities documented and identify, do you have one, what does it look like, and could this possibly be impacting their work.
So wait a minute, go back. You
Yeah.
said where you work, potentially, if they start working with you, will send you to the doctor. Is that doctor visit covered by the agency then?
It depends. If you have insurance, then
Okay.
they will help towards it. And if you don't have insurance, then that agency would possibly take care of it. And I say possibly because every situation and every person is different and unique. And
Yes.
so they deal with every situation in a unique way. So I
Mhm.
can't say that it's a definite for you, but it is not a definite for me.
Correct. Okay. Okay. So then let's jump back into a little bit more of the advocacy side.
Okay.
Um, in your experience, I know a lot of times it's the mom, it's the women, it's, the female figure in that individual's life. Um, do you see a lot of advocacy, or what would you like to see from our male counterparts as we continue to move forward in spreading the word out about coming alongside and partnering so that we're one lifting the burdens off of the moms, because a lot of times the moms are the biggest advocates and they're the ones that are pushing for change. What can the male figure, the fathers, do to help support this cause?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So, what I can say is that anyone who is advocating specifically for their children or for a child is important and is accepted, because not everybody wants to advocate. A lot of the times people like to write them off as if nothing is wrong with their child.
Mm.
Really big in the mental health and education sector of the disability, like specific learning disability, ADHD, autism. Nothing's wrong with him, he's fine. Nothing's going on, he's fine. So I think number one is advocating for the child, but also understanding what their limitations are, because how can you advocate if you don't know what their strengths and their weaknesses are? And
Mhm.
that goes for moms and dads, because I've ran into that where mom is aware that my child has disability but don't know how what their strengths and their weaknesses are. And
Mm.
that was where I would have to explain, when they're at home, what do you see? Well, how do you deal with them? And see, that helps, even with the dad participating in that, coming to meetings, coming to IEP meetings, to 504 meetings, to vocational rehab and service meetings, because a good counselor or a good vocational counselor or a good person that is interviewing that family in regards of that disability, they're going to ask you, how are they at home? What do you see? Do they do chores? Can they do these things? When you ask them, do you see them? Do you have to go back and redirect them? Do you have to
Mhm.
say, hey, did you finish this job? Are they completing their job? Because that's their first line of work, is at home.
Mm.
Can they clean their room with a one time ask? Do you have to redirect them? Do you have to ask them piece by piece, pick up this paper, pick up this, hang this up, da da da? That's your first job. And that's how I would interview and see, when you have dad in the presence of that interview, he can answer those questions just as much as mom can.
Mhm.
And so he may see things when they're outside in a gardening or cleaning or weeding that he has to direct, that
Mhm.
he has to tell them. So that part, being a part of those interviews, being a part of those questionnaires, answering, it also opens their mind of like, you know what, I do have to tell you 10,000 times to complete that one job.
That one
And that
time.
kind of lets them know, if you go to work and work at like Publix or any of the grocery stores, how many times would an employer have to ask you to do something?
Mm.
Put it in the context of, you're at work and you're getting cars. Will you acknowledge that there's cars coming? Will you see that? That's a safety hazard. When we
Mhm.
go and walk across the street, do I have to tell you to look back and forth at 15? That
Mm.
tells you the capacity and the comprehension, the listening skills at 15. When we go across the street, are you looking? If
Mhm.
you're not, you can't work outside and pull up carts
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
buggies. I probably would be concerned and be like, that's a safety hazard. Let's keep them in the store. Let's do bagging. Let's put them with an elderly or an older person who is working the cashier but is willing to teach them until they grow.
Mhm. Mhm. I love that, Marquita, and I wanna clarify, I was not alluding to male figures not being
Okay.
part of for our audience, don't y'all send me no nasty messages. Don't y'all sit here and say, "Ooh." Um, I just know that in the community, since I've gotten very much involved, it's predominantly females that are coming to workshops and coming to meetups and it's that female presence that is often there. I can tell you I've been blessed to have a husband who's very involved in our child's life. And I think that I'm not gonna take away from what he or any good father is doing to advocate and support on behalf of their children. So y'all don't come at me in these comments about my question. I was
I
just simply asking because I see who is showing up to the meetings.
Correct, but dad has a say. His what he sees in the house actually matters because he would see things differently. Dad has a totally different role in the household, and so interacting with the children, he may see it more of an employer way compared to how mom sees it. Children
Mhm.
treat their mother differently a lot of the times than their
Oh,
fathers.
yes.
So a lot of the times, mom would complain about this, but dad is like, mm, when I ask him, he gets it done. Or
Exactly.
and that's usually the case. Even when I was working with consumers, that was the case where mom was like, "Oh, he doesn't do this, da da da," and then dad's like, "I have no problems. He gets it done. So it can be done in the nicest way."
And you know what? I think that that's really for all children, whether they have a special need and or disability or not. Because our 2 girls, oftentimes, if I'm back in my office working and it's like, "Is anyone in the house with me?" It's so quiet, and I walk out and my husband is with the kids and they're reading books or quietly watching TV, and I'm like, why is it that when you're with me, you're bouncing off the walls, you sound like you're tearing up the house, and dad, you guys are perfect angels.
Mhm,
Like, what?
mhm.
So, well, let me jump back into just chit-chatting about supporting and being that advocate. You talk a lot about, being, resourceful, whether it's working with a local vocational group or working with the school to get, an IEP or a 504. What other advice would you give our audience who may not have any of those situations? They might not have kids, they might not have anyone, but they're listening to this and they want to support this cause. They want to support this community. How would you recommend someone who's watching this who just wants to become an advocate? How would you tell them to start?
Okay. Well, I would say going to your local schools and maybe asking, do they have any mentorship programs for the community to come in and mentor? Also asking for the SPED department, the special educational department, asking how maybe the director of that, most of the time they have a director over that program, how could you help? How
Mm,
could you, and especially if you are a business owner, someone who owns a business and do almost little to everything because with high school and middle school age kids, they have to learn those work skills. And so, ways that community business owners could come in and say, "Hey, I have an auto mechanic shop, and I would like to see if you have any kids who would like to come and maybe volunteer. They could sweep the shop. They could organize our tools, and those are really really good options. And then even if the business owners are interested in going through vocational rehab, then there's programs as well to come in and say, hey, do y'all have any high school students that y'all are working with, which more than likely they do, and could I would like to be signed up where your kids can come in and
mm.
help me. And there's different programs under the WIOA where vocational rehab services and could pay the kids to get some internships at these businesses, and the businesses could get credits towards taxes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I'm liking what I'm hearing.
Yeah. That's an option through vocational rehab services that they could offer. Not saying every one of them offers it, but ask and find out what options are there for your small business. If you would like to allow some of the young adults to come in.
Mhm, mhm. I
Yeah.
like that, Marquita. So I know that our time is limited, and this is, I can continue to go on and on. But before we go, from an advocacy standpoint, is there anything else you want to share with our audience? Anything?
Um, I just want to say that be an advocate for your child, but it entails a lot. It entails the good, the bad, the strengths, the weaknesses, identifying at what age and how their disability is growing. Being there with your child or with the individual that you are advocating for, be there with them, understand what is it that they're going through, and provide them with whatever resources. If you're not the person for them to talk to about their disability, being able to provide resources like counseling or support groups for that disability will help.
I love that. Marquita, thank you so much for your time today and sharing with us and just having another conversation. I think this is such an important topic, and I cannot say thank you enough. So I will bid you farewell because I know your time is also limited, but maybe next season we'll have you back. I can give our audience a little nugget about next season. My husband and I had a opportunity to go into a organization here locally that employs young adults with disabilities to teach them life skills and to set them up for success. So that's going to be part of our next season, season 3. And the knowledge and the wisdom that you shared with us helped us when we went into that space. So thank you. We appreciate you. We love you, and
Thank
congratulations.
you.
Yay. All right, y'all. So, again, another season in the books. What an amazing conversation we had with Marquita. And not only Marquita, but all of our guests this past season. We will be taking a short break, roughly about 3 weeks over the Christmas and New Year holidays. But feel free to go back and watch any of our old episodes, and look for season 3 to kick off in the new year. In the meantime, y'all have a happy holiday season. And if you don't know, I love that. So make sure you click like, subscribe, and share. Take care. Bye.